Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's World Affairs Councils of America Zoom on Overlooked America, Building Jobs and Tech Skills. I'm Charles Shapiro, President of World Affairs Council of Atlanta, filling in for an exhausted Bill Clifford, the CEO of the World Affairs Councils of America. Today's program is supported by the AWS Institute. I want to give a special shout out to our audience around the world, including India and Nigeria, to members of World Affairs Councils across the US and from universities, workforce development authorities, high schools, and 90 plus World Affairs Councils across the US. We will take your questions. Please use the question function on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Make them concise and polite. Our featured speaker today is Carlos Gutierrez. Mr. Gutierrez was the 35th U.S. Secretary of Commerce, the CEO of the Kellogg Company, the chair of Albright Stonebridge Group, and co-founder and executive chair of Empath. And I think I'm probably leaving out a long list of other accomplishments. Secretary Gutierrez spoke at the World Affairs Council here in Atlanta in 2015. As a child, he immigrated to the US from Cuba. In his 20s, he went to work for the Kellogg Company in Mexico. That was in 1975, driving a truck, delivery route. By 1995, he was the chairman of the board and CEO of this Fortune 500 company, a position he held until he joined George Bush's cabinet in 2005. Laura Dawson, our moderator, is Principal Program Manager at the AWS Institute. She was the director of the Canada Institute, the Wilson Center, and is an expert on international trade. It is trade and the dislocations caused by trade that sparked Laura's interest in workforce development. And last week, Laura was awarded the 2020 Person of Distinction by the Public Affairs Association of Canada. Laura, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Charles. It's great to be here with the World Affairs Council of Atlanta and the World Affairs Councils of America and so many folks around the world. This is a really incredible turnout. And I would like to say it's because I am the person of distinction for the Public Affairs Association of Canada, but actually I think it's because we have such a great roster of panelists speaking today. And in particular, Secretary Gutierrez as our keynote speaker, or the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to have a bit of a fireside chat with Secretary Gutierrez for the first 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm going to bring in my friends and colleagues, Tejas Vashi from AWS Restart and Brendan Walsh from the 1901 Group, and we're going to have a bit of a three-way conversation. But I have to confess, Secretary Gutierrez, I'm a bit of a fangirl. I don't know how many free trade agreement fangirls you run into, or fan women. I think I'm past the fangirl stage. But you were really the Secretary of Commerce during what I would consider to be the heyday of US trade ambition, trade liberalization, external facing agreements. While you were Commerce Secretary, I know that you worked on the agreements with Central America, with Korea, with Panama and Colombia. And that was really impressive. And the US was taking on globalization and trade liberalization with a fair amount of ambition. One of the things that I know about trade agreements is that when you're negotiating these, you put in this clause called, or program called, trade adjustment assistance. And trade adjustment assistance is a vehicle that is supposed to be used for training workers or retraining workers if and when they lose their jobs because of trade agreements. So let's talk a little bit just about that mechanism of trade adjustment assistance. Does that work? Did that work? What can you say about your thinking and the approach of the US administration when you were negotiating this agreement and putting that TAA vehicle within the agreement?
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. I think it was well intentioned, but probably insufficient. Uh, it just it wasn't big enough to offset the tremendous impact on communities. So we always had the numbers to support trade on a national level. It was very difficult to support trade on a regional and local level when you had communities where their biggest employer was just shut down because of trade. So I think we have to find new mechanisms. I think we need to do it a little bit more deliberately. But yes, a lot of communities were impacted. And again, we have this dilemma that trade is good for the country, but it's not good for everyone. And how to make it as good for everyone as you can, I think continues to be the challenge. There's no question that the world is better off with global trade. So it's something that we need to figure out, and we need to figure out how to continue to trade, how to continue to grow without hurting as many people.
Right. Knowing what you know now on how globalization has unrolled, how trade liberalization has unrolled, and some of the ideas that we had for retraining workers and for providing good jobs in different sectors, is there anything that you think you might have done differently, or if you could shake your crystal ball, how you would have approached trade liberalization and readjustment for workers?
You know, I think about that often, and it's hard to go back and second guess, and I'm not sure that would be that would be a productive exercise. But what we did not see back then was technology, the speed at which technology was coming at us. When we talked with China about intellectual property, we were talking about shirts, we were talking about DVDs. We're in a totally different world and didn't see what was coming in terms of privacy, in terms of hacking, in terms of all the exposure that we would have. And then in terms of the exposure that our employees, our workers would have. So if it was free trade that was taking down plants back then, I would say that the next wave, whether it's related to trade or not, but the next wave of job destruction is precisely technology. And that has intensified in the era of COVID. Before that, it was coming at us gradually. But with COVID, it has come at us exponentially. And I think it's taken over so many jobs, taken over the way we live. And that's our big vulnerability today, is how to prepare millions of workers nationwide for a new economy. And I don't think it can be left down to the market. I am a free market trader. I am pro-business, all of that. But this is so big that I just don't think we can say, well, let everybody fend for themselves. So it has to be the government, it has to be the private sector, but we have to start very quickly to focus on reskilling, upskilling, focus on skills. Because if not, we're gonna have a lot bigger problem than what trade ever caused.
And that's something that we're all here to talk about today, is technology skills, technology jobs, and there's this phenomenon where, while there are jobs being lost in basic assembly and some traditional industries, there is a tremendous gap and shortage of tech skills. Lots of jobs in the tech sector are just going unfilled. But I'm wondering, can you take a worker who has lost their job in, say, the automotive sector, and take that person and give them the skills and training they need to go and design 5G technology? What's the bridge between old job, I don't say traditional sectors, but the kinds of jobs that our economy was based on previously, and the kinds of jobs that our new knowledge economy, tech
Sure.
economy is based on. Can we get from there to here?
Sure, and I think a lot of it is focusing on skills, because up until now, it's always been about degrees and diplomas and, well, go to community college, get a degree, and then you'll be ready for a new job. And that really doesn't work anymore. A diploma may get you in the door, but it's not going to get you the job or enable you to excel at the job. So it really depends on people. Some people have a knack for certain skills. I'll tell you, if somebody who's worked on the production line of an automotive plant, they have skills. They may not know it, because we don't think that way, but they have skills that they can start with. Some of those skills, regrettably, are going to sunset because, technology is moving so quickly that you have skills that a year from now may not be needed anymore. And then there are emerging skills that will be necessary a year from now. So that's really the trick. And we used to talk about lifelong learning before. Now it's as much of a necessity as it is to have a full-time job. But yes, retraining works, training works, reskilling, upskilling, but you have to have the infrastructure. You have to understand what skills someone needs to upgrade, what proficiency levels, what kind of coursework, and all of that typically was done manually. Today, we can do it through machine learning. We can do it through technology. We can actually infer the skills of an employee and show skills to an individual who didn't know he or she had those skills. And again, it's because we don't use that language. Just a little side story. A friend of mine was moving out of the banking industry. And I said, well, you must have some very good skills since you were in the financial services industry. He said, I don't know what my skills are. And of course they have skills, but we're just not used to thinking in those terms. And I think that is really the currency of the future, and the language of the future is the language of skills.
Yeah, I agree entirely. To take it into a side story of my own, I moved from university professor and think tank director into the tech sector in my middle 50s. I'm a grandma, and my technology skills prior to joining AWS I was pretty good with my telephone, and that was it. I just the basic skills that we all have to get through our working lives. And I was required to do all sorts of training and upskilling and learn what this new world of digital technology was. And honestly, it kicked my butt sometimes, but I got through it. And there was all sorts of supports and people and training and young people who were willing to help me and in my transition. And so I think that your point that we can all reskill is important. I also think many of us need supports, need some training wheels on the bike to get from here to there. And so I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you're doing now and what Empath is and what your objectives are with this company.
Well, I actually just I had a little bit of an ad I threw in the last question, but we essentially infer skills. We use machine learning. We don't need a lot of manual work. We go into whatever systems of record a company may have. And after several rounds of machine learning and training the machine, it can go and find all of the data on an employee and infer the skills of that employee. And then we would show it to the employee and say, this is what we think, or this is what we have found based on all the information and all the hundreds of thousands of signals that there are in the systems about you. We believe these are your skills and your proficiency levels. And the employee is the subject matter expert. And we've inferred skills at a 95% accuracy, where the employee says, yes, those are my skills. Proficiency levels, 80%. So we're still we're still trying to get that higher. One of the things that we do that we're very proud of is we don't use resumes and we don't use LinkedIn data. Not that those aren't wonderful things, and LinkedIn is great, but if you look at a resume, invariably, you can tell where someone was born. You can probably tell the color of their skin, if they're male or female, their age. Those are all things that can bias a point of view. So we don't use the resume, and we actually use ID numbers. So it's skill versus skill. And we have found, just as part of the system being managed by humans, that there are biases. And these are unconscious biases. So it's another thing that we like to do, but or that we do. But essentially, we determine the skills of a person, of an employee, the skills of a job, and then the coursework required to upskill an individual for a new job. Those three pillars. We're not in the training business. We recommend the course, but those are the three basic pillars of our product. And we think that that is the way of the future. We have yet to hear a company say we're not thinking about that. It seems like everyone is trying to figure out the workforce of the future. People are leading to skills, but getting from here to there hasn't been easy. It just, the tools haven't been available to be able to do it at scale without a lot of manual interference.
Well, if I can offer a recommendation, put grandmothers who are good with a phone as one of the inferred skills that you put on your
Listen, I'll tell you something. Once in a while, we talk about the gig economy, and the first thing that comes to mind is an Uber driver. Well, an Uber driver has skills. Driving a car is a skill, and having being able to read a navigator is a skill. So we sometimes overlook the obvious skills. I want to tell you one more story, if I may. The reason I am passionate about skills, and the reason I believe in reskilling and upskilling, I don't have a university degree. So I worked my way up the corporate ladder by upskilling myself. So I would notice what subjects were important, and I would go to university and take that course. And I took the course in order to learn, not to check a box. And that's why people reskill. When they go to reskill, they're not there to say, I took the course and here's my diploma. They have to learn. So I know that it works, and it worked for me. And I think it will work for whoever is interested in becoming more relevant in this economy that is changing so quickly and that is coming at us so rapidly, in the sense that we're not really sure what skills will be the most relevant in 24 months because they're changing so quickly.
Right. I have a bit of a confession to make, in that I know our other two panelists a bit better, because we've been working together and doing some road shows. And they are two individuals who are, like you, down in the, I don't want to say down in the trenches, but they are really at the level of engagement with folks who are looking for skilling and reskilling, folks who are looking for connections to tech sector employment. And they're not just, going for, not cherry picking maybe the easier communities of students and folks who are ready for tech sector jobs. They're really looking for folks in rural communities, unemployed, underemployed individuals. They've rolled up their sleeves the same way that you have, Secretary, to try to advance this skilling digital transformation. So I am really pleased to, first of all, introduce them, and then I'm going to add them to our three-person, or I guess four-person conversation. I'm really pleased to introduce Tejas Vashi, who's the global leader of AWS Restart, which helps unemployed and underemployed individuals from all backgrounds reskill and launch cloud careers. And Brendan Walsh, who's the Vice President of Partner Relations at 1901 Group, which helps individuals in rural and underserved communities in the United States access the skills they need, and provides a pipeline to jobs through contracts with state and local governments for digital services. So welcome, gentlemen, and hopefully the whack wizards can put you on screen so I can see that you're there. Brandon and Tejas, are you there?
Yes, we are.
Yay, okay, technology works, see? Don't trust the woman who's just good with a phone. So Brendan and Tejas, and I'm going to start with Tejas. I'm going to open with you with the same question or variation of the question that I asked to Secretary Gutierrez. And that is, can workers who have lost their jobs in manufacturing or hospitality or other services acquire the skills they need to work in the technology sector? And Tejas, let's start with you, and then Brendan, I'll ask you to jump in.
Yeah. First of all, Laura, thanks for having us. Secretary, great to meet you.
Thank you.
Laura, the way you position that question is quite interesting because it makes it sound like there's this big radical shift all the time from a manufacturing job into a technology sector or from agriculture to a technology sector. Keep in mind today, all organizations are going through rapid transformation of their businesses, right? And they're trying to drive efficiencies. They're trying to acquire new businesses or new business models. They're trying to just remain competitive, and they're leveraging technology to do that. So first of all, keep in mind that a lot of the individuals that we're talking about aren't even leaving the manufacturing space or the hospitality space or the agriculture industry. What they're doing is they're learning technology and learning technology skills and applying it to what they already know, which is the vertical that they're already in. And I think the secretary gave a good example a few minutes ago about the manufacturing plant. Remember, somebody who's built a career over the last 5, 10, 15 years on the assembly line knows the assembly line really well. And with technology, they can reduce the downtime, they can improve the efficiency overall, they can help with the supply chain with an understanding of technology and how to apply technology, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's leveraging cloud technologies, implementing cybersecurity strategies to prevent others from infiltrating the assembly lines. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that are going on in today's space. There are some that want to completely move from one vertical into the technology space, and that is also possible today. One of the things to keep in mind, and again, the secretary touched on this, is technology is moving very fast these days, right? And so even if you've been in this technology sector for years, right, 5, 10 years of experience, you do have a leg up in that you have some experience. But even for somebody with 5 to 10 years experience, they're going to have to continue to evolve their skills. As new products, new services, new technologies emerge, they need to continue to reskill. And so an individual coming on, it's never too late for an individual to join on the technology bandwagon, right? And be able to jump in and build the skills necessary. And over time, get the experience as well.
Right. So what I hear you saying is it's not a giant leap. It's not a sea change from one thing to another. It's more of a continuum of where you are and where you need to go, moving as gradually or as rapidly as you need to.
Absolutely.
I'm going to, yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to add a little bit more to that. So one of the things that these individuals do need to have is a good set of learning and training assets. At the same time, these need to be built on real world scenarios, right? Things that came from actual customers and actual scenarios. It also needs to be complemented with hands-on learning, right? So whether it's virtualized labs, it's hands-on capabilities, but they really need to gain that experience very quickly. And a lot of the materials out there today do that. At AWS, we have an entire set of curriculum, both virtual and in classroom delivery, that attends to that. So I feel that to answer your question, yes, people can pick up the skills necessary and join the trends in technology and become very efficient very quickly.
Thank you. All right, Brendan, I'm going to let you get in on this. Brendan, what do you want to offer about folks making the transition from more traditional sectors into the tech sector?
Well, thank you for the invitation today. And workforce development has always really been a key component of our 1901 Group story. Both the Secretary's comments and Tejas's comments are right on. We've had success, and we can tout, folks from as a welder coming in and creating and starting a career path in information technology, or from the retail industry into technology. And what Tejas also said is right on point, that the speed of change and even the faster speed of change in technology really has created this dynamic that for folks who are currently in information technology or technology, they always have to be skilling, always, and that's just to keep up. Whether to innovate and to create new, you have to skill up even faster. And the second dynamic is for people who are interested in joining the technology sector or information technology sector. It's never too late. Things are changing so fast. To the Secretary's point, if you jump in now, and that's sort of, I guess, the call to action to individuals, is don't worry about where you are today. If you are involved, if you're inquisitive, if you're interested in learning and continuous learning, then I think the next 24 months, next 36 months of someone's career can be very, very productive and lucrative.
Great. Well, I gave Secretary Gutierrez a minute to talk about what Empath is doing. Starting with you, Brendan, can you dive a little deeper and tell us about what 1901 Group is and does, and how you're contributing to this reskilling transformation?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So 1901 Group is a managed service provider focused on public sector clientele, U.S. federal, state and local, but predominantly today in U.S. public sector, U.S. federal. We offer life cycle information technology services from design, from implementation, operations, optimization, all big words. But we do focus especially on cloud application migration. Our partnership with AWS is certainly key and central to that. But our niche, our business model, and why this topic is so interesting to us is our model has always been about remote managed services. And our people, our operations center, are all non-urban oriented, or we started that way in rural locations. So the ability to skill up, to reskill, to relocate, to operate remotely is really central to what we've been doing over the last 10.5 years. And this discussion, this topic, is really the foundation of our business model.
Yeah. And the Secretary Gutierrez spoke at the opening. COVID, the pandemic, which has been awful, has really, though, made us aware of the possibilities of remote work and our ability to separate where we live from where we work. Tejas, you are the global leader for AWS Restart. I know a little bit about what you do, and I just want to ask you to explain a little bit more about what Restart is and does. And also, if I can point out, while we're talking about skills development in the United States today, AWS Restart is operating outside of the United States as well. So you've got a bit of a global platform. So Tejas, can you talk a little bit about AWS Restart and what you're doing to help address the skills gap?
Yeah, sure, Laura. And thanks for pointing out, yes, AWS Restart is a global program. It is a CSR program, a corporate social responsibility program here at AWS. And what it focuses on is taking unemployed, underemployed individuals and putting them through a 12-week training reskilling program. That reskilling program builds the foundations of IT technology and then moves them into the basics cloud foundation and sysops type skills that this individual would need. Embedded throughout this 12-week curriculum is also the soft skills / employability skills. Soft skills in terms of presentation skills, working in teamworks, having a time management, things that are necessary for the workforce. And then employability skills like reviewing resumes, helping prepare individuals for their interviews, those kind of things. And so after the 12-week program is complete, we actually do connect them to job opportunities with our AWS customers and partners. So what we're really doing, Laura, is creating a win-win-win scenario. We're helping individuals across the globe that are unemployed, underemployed, and would never have gotten into the technology space without training and education such as this. We're helping the local communities in which they reside, because we're taking individuals that otherwise needed a helping hand, right? Whether it was unemployment support, whether it was meal support, whether it was other financial support, and they're actually coming back and contributing back to the local industry in which, or the community in which they live, right? Through being gainfully employed. And then we're helping our customers and partners who are continuously in seek of seeking good talent, but it's just very hard to find because the demand is just significantly outpacing the supply of good talent in the industry today. So that's the Restart program.
Okay, I want to bring Secretary Gutierrez back in here. Secretary, you and I were joking a little bit about being older, being kind of bootstraps, reskilling ourselves. Are there any limitations that people face if they're looking to skill or reskill? Can you be too old, or can you be living in too remote a location? Economic status. Are there any barriers that just prevent people from making this transformation, making this change, Secretary?
Regrettably, there are. Not everyone has access to broadband. Not everyone has the same internet connection that we all do. I think the estimate is about 10 million Americans. That's a very big deal. There's no way they can get ahead. They can't improve their livelihood without having that infrastructure. So every time I hear we're going to have an infrastructure bill, and I think people think about it as we're going to fix some bridges and potholes, and the infrastructure we need is precisely digital infrastructure to be able to get everyone on an equal basis to participate. Without that, it's just very difficult. And I'm talking about rural communities, inner city communities, things like that.
Right. So what I'm hearing you saying is there's definitely a role for governments to play in helping to level the playing field. Yeah. Brenda, do you want to identify any barriers that would be an impediment to reskilling?
Yeah, and maybe not just barriers, but I'll say three things that, in my opinion, are essential. One, to the Secretary's point, today, especially in the COVID and when we look post-COVID era, access to high-speed internet is essential for anyone, rural or urban, but especially rural. Two is I call technical aptitude. It goes back to that being inquisitive, how things work, how things fit together, why things don't work. If people are inquisitive by nature, that attribute, that characteristic translates very well into technology and information technology. And then the third is really a combination, and I give credit, applaud AWS Restart, the combination of both academic training, education, plus on the job or hands-on training. And Restart includes both in their curriculum, which I'm a proponent of. So if you look at access to the internet, especially high speed, being inquisitive and having both the academic classroom type plus the hands-on training, to me, if you have all three of those, then your rate of success is much higher.
Yeah, you've mentioned to me some of your success stories through your program and people who you wouldn't think of for traditional tech jobs, but were inquisitive, did have that desire to learn. Do you want to just tell us about some of your success stories? I won't pre guess what you're going to say, but I'll just open that up to you.
And that was to me, Laura?
Yeah, sorry, that was to you, Brendan. You told me about a welder, and
Yeah.
yes.
No, we have some great success stories. One was a welder who came into the company. When I say jumped in, really jumped in at an entry-level position, worked his way up through to a management position. Always was learning, always was volunteering. You know, from what I experienced, never backed down from a challenge. And that was also when we were growing as a company, going from 20, 40, 50 people to hundreds of people in the company. So the welder story is a great one. We've also had, I mentioned retail, someone who came out of the retail job market, was by training, had some technical understanding training, and really was looking for opportunity. So back to the secretary's point again about this person had skills. She had very good skills. They just weren't being applied in the right industry for her career, her opportunity. So for anyone sitting out there, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing or hospitality, knowing the skills you have, I think that's really essential. So there should be not 2 success stories, and we have more, but there should be millions of success stories, to the secretary's earlier point.
Great, great. Tejas, back to you. I'm going to give you fielder's choice. You can answer 2 questions, or you can answer 1 question. I'll go back to the barriers question if you want to speak to that. But I'm also interested in, the other 2 speakers have mentioned the role of governments. I'm also interested in if you have some suggestions or observations about what role governments can play.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just start off with the first question about the barriers. So one of the things that we're doing here at AWS is making the training accessible. We have hundreds of free digital courses that are available from the expert level down to the entry level, right? Which allows individuals to access training and continue their skilling process at their own time, at their own convenience, regardless of where they are located, right? So that's one part of it. We also augment that with training, in-classroom training that could be delivered through a live instructor in a classroom, or virtually delivered with in a virtual setting with an instructor that is still synchronously delivering the training, right? And what this allows you to do is build an individual's skills up with a mix of digital assets as well as in-classroom type assets. So they get the experience of working in a team. They get the experience of getting some self time. They get this with real live scenarios. So it's practice-based, and then they get hands-on labs. So it's a combination of all of those things. The other barrier that we need to overcome, which is often overlooked, is the current mindset out there. And I think the secretary mentioned this a little earlier in terms of a lot of the employers are still looking for that unicorn hire, right? Somebody who has 5 years experience, a college degree hanging on their wall, and can come in and start doing the job the first day. In reality, those unicorns are exactly that, unicorns. They're far in between, right? So they're hard to find. What we're seeing right now is the need for companies to open up and say, whether it's a college degree or not, do they have the right skills? Can they pick up the skills? Do they have the passion to pick up these skills? Because again, technology is moving very quickly. Even if you find somebody with that experience and with that training is going to be obsolete, and they have to continue to reskill themselves anyway, right? So that's your barrier question. I also wanted to circle back really quickly to the role of government. I think the role of government plays a very big role in this entire process. First of all, as an employer, right? In many communities, the state and local governments are the largest employer. And so it's important for them to set the stage and also be the example of being the employer that actually brings in people that were unemployed, may or may not have the college background, but bring them in and help them get skilled. The second thing that they can do is help find funding or fund some of the resources we're talking about here, right? Reskilling efforts, because that's going to be pretty powerful to help build that diverse workforce, right? In fact, the government often pays a lot of or invests a lot in unemployment services or other types of support services, which could be offset if you had a lower unemployment rate, right? So it's just thinking through those. And then the third piece is as a connector, right? We've worked with a lot of chambers of commerces, for example, or workforce investment boards, where they can actually connect local employers that are desperately seeking talent to programs such as the Restart program or our Academy program, or what Empath is doing, to actually get individuals that are going through the reskilling and connect them to actual jobs. So those are the roles I feel government can play at all levels, state, local, and federal.
Yeah. Secretary Gutierrez, first, I'm going to ask you a question, but Ambassador Shapiro would like me to tell you, I'm sure that our Q&A is going to be starting in just a few minutes. And so if you've got your cues, please be putting those cues in the chat box. I think it's the chat box. And fortunately for me, Ambassador Shapiro is going to come back on and help me with the questions and answers, because between the two of us, the senior citizens, both of us good with a phone, we might be able to figure this out. So my question for Secretary Gutierrez and then the rest of the panel is, take us forward 5 years. What does the new normal look like in terms of workforce development? Are we all going back to the way things were? Are employers going to permanently move to remote work? Is it going to be easier to acquire new skills, harder to acquire new skills? Flash forward a few years from now, I dare not put a number on it, but what's the new normal look like in the post-COVID environment for workforce development? Secretary?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. Yes, there will be more remote work. And, you know, we, at the beginning of COVID, we thought these tools for these virtual meetings were a bad substitute for an in-person meeting. And now I think we all realize they're here to stay. And even when we go back to the office, if there is such a thing, we're going to continue to use them. So the acceleration of technology, but we have talked about companies becoming learning organizations for a long time. And I've seen a lot of CEOs stand up and say, we are a learning organization. But putting that into place and operationalizing that has been very difficult. And it takes more than just a motivational speech. I think that time has come and is coming, is that organizations will become, by necessity, learning organizations. So employees will know what their skills are, their proficiency levels. They'll know what skills they need to get to the job they want. So they're constantly going to be training. They're constantly going to be learning. And that's something that perhaps people thought they could get their MBA and once in a while read an article, but you're in great shape. That is over. So in many ways, these workplaces are like universities as well, because everyone will have their upskilling task to take care of. The other thing I want to say about 2025 or whatever, 5 years from now, is when I read about the skills that are coming up and what are the emerging skills, and obviously technology is right there, and some types of technology, and whether it's Python or something else, but technological capacity, aptitude. But there's also a need for other types of skills: salesmanship, collaboration, leading teams. So it's fascinating, because on one hand, you have a tremendous amount of pressure on upskilling with technology, which is true. But at the same time, companies need people who can deal with people, and people who can convince people, and people who are good on their feet. So it'll be a fascinating combination of the two. But no question, I think universities and workplaces are going to look very similar in 5 years.
Brendan, flash us forward, 2025. What's new and what's the same about workforce development? For Brendan.
Well, I think if we all look at the COVID and natural disasters, I believe that remote and rural workforce development, job creation is really part of our country's plan for workforce resiliency, for continuity of operations of our government, federal, state, and local, and even levels of our national security. So I think if you look 5 years out, I am optimistic that our government at all levels will look at rural and remote work as really part of the operational plan, the concept of operations. I don't think we can avoid that. I obviously think we shouldn't. And I think it's something we can invest in as a society and as a country, and we really should. So that's my forecast.
Thank you. And just by the way, the World Affairs Council of Atlanta would like me to thank you for putting the Georgia Tech poster on your wall. We're feeling
There you
very
go.
Georgia-ish. Tejas, what does 2025 look like to you?
Yeah. So, Laura, we believe the future of tech is diverse, and our mission is really to build an inclusive industry that attracts, develops, and engages innovative builders with various backgrounds. So where we see this all leading is where we are today, right? Cloud technologies continue to help organizations transform at a rapid pace, right? And so those employees and those individuals with the right skills are being sought out and are in high demand. And we see this all continuing, right? So our job as employers and potential educators is also to help skill and reskill and keep building this talent at the pace that the technology moves at, right? So we're just going to see a lot more speed and evolution in technology, with new products and services evolving at a breakneck pace. And so our job is to keep up with that and continue working with government and educational institutions to evolve their skills development efforts as well, right? Moving away from the traditional 2-year, 4-year college environment to something that is also aligned. And I think the secretary mentioned where the industry and academia are going to begin to look much more closely aligned.
Ambassador Charles Shapiro, I need you to come in here and help me out with some of the Q's and the A's. I see there's a big stack of questions in the box, and I want to give people a chance to ask them. So Ambassador Shapiro, what have we got for questions?
Okay, I'm going to ask you, we've got a lot of questions. I've eliminated some of them, they're duplicates. So short answers would be real handy. Tejas, what happens to universities? I'm on the board of a local college here in Atlanta. What happens to universities over the, they were going to be wiped out by Coursera. Do you remember that? Now we've got this. Where are universities in 5 years? And I'm not sure if Tejas or Brendan or Secretary Gutierrez would like to answer that.
So I'll give you my take. And AWS has a program, a sister program to the Restart program known as the Academy, AWS Academy. And what we do there is we work with 2- and 4-year institutions, and we provide them the latest content. We provide them instructor qualifications. We provide them and their students the ability to train up and educate the students on the latest skills and the evolving technologies with a lot of hands-on expertise. So when these students do come out with a degree, they do have the ability to get right into the workforce. What we're also doing through the Academy program and Educate programs is implementing our certification programs. So AWS certifications actually validate an individual's skills in the proficiency of whatever it is that they're being certified in. It also helps build the confidence of that learner. So I think we're going to start seeing more of these approaches where the universities will have to adapt more and more to real world scenarios versus just the theoretical aspects. And I think most universities that I've spoken to are very open to that. They see the need to help students be prepared, not just with a college degree, but to actually do something in the workforce, right? Very productive.
I'm noticing that there are lots and lots of questions in the chat box that are for specific people. And I'll just say that working with our friends at the World Affairs Council of America, we will somehow try to forward the questions on to folks or try to provide specific answers, or at least, let me say that better, the contacts for the individual organizations who are represented here today. So you can follow up with those organizations individually, because it seems like Empath and 1901 Group and AWS Restart are all highly popular in this section of questions. But here is a question that I like, and I'll open this up as fielder's choice, even though it is linked to Brendan. What data or digital skills do you see as crucial for future workers in the public sector?
That's a great question. I would probably say that there's such a demand for whether it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotic process automation, software development, testing. I don't know if there's any one skill set, and to the point of this, I think all of us have agreed that the speed of change, it would be tough to draw a line in the sand right now and say what specific technology skill sets necessary. And I would defer back to if you have a traditional education, 2-4 year hands-on, and you are in the technology sector, that's great. The crystal ball of what technology in 5 years is probably beyond my skill set. And if you don't have that technology background, I would jump in, and if I were looking to join the technology sector, I'm giving a plug to AWS Restart, AWS Educate. There's a lot of content out there that's free. That's if you have access to the internet. So my best shot at that answer.
Secretary Gutierrez, using your machine learning and looking at people's skills, is there a difference between rural and urban? Have y'all been able to detect that?
Good question. And you cut off for a second there, but in terms of skills, is there a difference between rural and urban?
Yeah.
We haven't done a lot of work yet with urban, with rural, which I think would tell you quite a bit. I would imagine that some would be, of course, the technology would be, but I also would guess that we would uncover skills that people didn't know they had. We'd find hidden gems somewhere in rural America that have skills that can take them many places. But we have not done any inferencing in rural organizations and rural companies. We typically work with large organizations, but I would imagine their skill set is different. They've been exposed to different things. They've developed different skills, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the capacity to learn new skills. Somebody used to say it's about aptitude and attitude. And attitude perhaps is even more important than aptitude. It's just this attitude of saying, I'm going to learn and I have the will to get through this and upskill.
I have a question from Kansas City, and this is a question for Tejas. And the person from Kansas City says, here in Kansas City, there's a wide cross-section of unemployed: hotel, restaurant industry, manufacturing, small and medium-sized businesses. Just lost my question because Charles is scrolling. If I am in one of these sectors, where should I go to get help in retraining and upskilling and to improve my opportunities for employment?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that question, by the way. So Laura, maybe what we'll do in our responses out, we'll add a link. So on the AWS training and certification website, we do have learning paths. And this is great for individuals that don't know exactly what next, right? Where do I go? It actually has recommendations in terms of learning paths that you can follow. And it outlines to get to what roles, right? So if these are the outcomes you're looking for, if this is the kind of role you'd like to be involved in your career, then this would be the learning path, depending on where you start. So we can provide that link to the audience here, Laura.
Great, great. And you are, AWS Research is a free program too, isn't it? It's
Yes,
available at Research. Ambassador Spiro, do we have time for one more question, or are you going to do the wrap up and roll out?
We have time for one more question, and I had it. You just made it pop out of my head. I apologize, but there are loads of questions about people. What kind of skills are employers looking for? How do people keep up with those skills? And then finally, and I'm going to throw this out to whoever's answered. There's also a shortage of HVAC technicians and people who can do what I guess I would call more traditional work, automotive repair mechanics. How do you channel people to those jobs? Whoever would like to answer.
I'd be happy to make a comment.
Do it.
Well, so I've been careful, and we at 1901 Group try to be careful with using technology and information technology. Tejas brought up a point that many industries now are technically driven, and there's always an information technology component of that. So I'm personally and professionally more involved with the information technology workforce development as the relationships with AWS. But I do think, for the country's sake, the question's a great question. And there should be the same effort on the technology side as well as the information technology side. And educators in the country should be able to articulate, we should help them articulate the differences as well as to the employers. So I do think government, individuals who want to upskill, educators who want to promote and teach, and then employers to hire, I think those profiles, that differentiation, that nuance, it's pretty important.
That's great. We're running out of time. I want to thank Laura Dawson, our moderator, and I want to thank Secretary Carlos Gutierrez, Tejas Vashi, Brendan Walsh. What I'm leaving with is Carlos Gutierrez's idea of he says I'm constantly upskilling myself, and that's the attitude that our educational system needs to imbue in all of our students. One of the questions was someone who was an immigrant from Iraq and said, here's the things that she had done. Imagine if everybody was as adaptable and worked as hard at upskilling themselves as immigrants to the United States do. Yep. And that's a perfect thought to take with ourselves as we move to Thanksgiving and all that we are thankful for in this country this week as we gather together. So I want to thank you, Carlos Gutierrez, Tejas Vashi, Brendan Walsh, Laura Dawson. I've put in a little advertisement here for ourselves. We've got World Affairs Council of Atlanta has upcoming programs next week on Tuesday, December 1, U.S.-Japan Alliance under President Biden with Ambassador Japan to the United States, Shinsuke Sugiyama. And then on Wednesday, December 3rd, a program on U.S. trade with James Kim, chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea, and Craig Lesser, CEO of the Pendleton Group and former Georgia Commissioner of Trade. I want to urge all of you to follow the World Affairs Council on YouTube. Thursday's Thanksgiving, which means that next Tuesday is Giving Tuesday. Don't forget your local World Affairs Councils around the U.S. Please be generous. And I want to give special thanks to Miriam Puertos from AWS, Tricia Long from 1901, Fernanda Lucchini, Executive Director of the World Affairs Council, and Valerie Lopez DeFrank, producer of this show. Thank you all. I appreciate it. And we will see, I hope I will see all of you next Tuesday, December 1, for a program on the U.S.-Japan relationship with the Japanese ambassador to the U.S. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.